You said, "What on earth is going on in my house?" I shouted as I stepped through my front door after months away. My project had wrapped up earlier than expected, so I decided to surprise myself with an unannounced return only to be met with a shock I could never have prepared for. There, right in my living room, a full-blown Quincy A++ era was underway. Around 100 guests, music blasting, decorations everywhere. And at the center of it all, a blonde hoe-type woman who carried herself as if she owned the place. The moment her eyes met mine, and she spotted my luggage, she whipped out her phone. 911 there's a dangerous man breaking into my event. She told them, her event. Meanwhile, I was standing inside my own home, wondering how long she had been here and what else she had been doing. Let me paint the scene. After a long drive back, I expected nothing more than to crash in my bed. Instead, my house glowed like it was part of a festival. Vehicles lined the street, mariachi music spilled from the backyard, and my first thought was that maybe a neighbor's party had gotten out of hand. But when I opened the front door with my own key, I walked into a celebration straight out of a magazine. Sprayed of balloons, elegant DA copyright core, a chocolate fountain in the dining room, and a young girl in a lavish pink ball gown. A mariachi band played on my patio, and a massive banner declared, "Happy 15th birthday, Sophia. Welcome to the Rodriguez family tradition." Rodriguez was my family name, but I didn't know any Sophia, and I certainly hadn't planned any Quincy A++ era. Then I saw here a woman in her late 40s, pearls around her neck, clipboard in hand, speaking into a wireless mic like she was hosting a wedding. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced with pride, "the Rodriguez family has owned this beautiful Spanish colonial hacienda for generations. Tonight, we honor Sophia's Quincy A++ era and the continuation of authentic Mexican family traditions." I stood there, baffled, listening to this stranger talk about my home as though it were part of her heritage. My confusion turned into fury when I realized she had decorated the place with my personal belongings and my family photographs, portraits of my grandparents, even my childhood pictures. There were little plaques labeling them as Rodriguez family through the generations. Worst of all, my late father's Purple Heart and military medals were displayed in a glass case with a sign reading, "Rodriguez Family Military Heritage honoring our heroes." My father had died serving in Afghanistan, and seeing his medals treated like party props hit me like a punch to the gut. I confronted her. "Excuse me, what is this?" She turned to me with a polished smile. "This is a private family celebration. Are you with catering? Kitchen entrances around back. This is my house." I shot back, "That's my father's Purple Heart." Her demeanor shifted instantly. She gave me a look like I just claimed to be royalty. "Sir, I understand people can get passionate about family stories, but this is documented Rodriguez heritage. Perhaps you're confusing yourself with television tales about successful Mexican families." That was it. "This is my family's event," I said firmly. "I'm Ben Rodriguez. This is my home." The music stopped. The mariachi band froze mid-song. Every guest turned toward me as though I had crashed a royal banquet. Sophia's father stepped forward. "We paid 15 grand for an authentic Rodriguez family venue. If you're part of the family, where have you been?" "I've been away for work," I said. "This woman's been living in my house." The so-called coordinator raised her microphone again. "Everyone, please remain calm. We have a confused individual here." Occasionally, people from the certain backgrounds develop emotional attachments to properties they've worked on. Security is handling the misunderstanding. The audacity was unreal as she was painting me as some delusional handyman who couldn't let go of a job site. Then she pulled out official-looking paperwork, a laminated business license for Rodriguez Cultural Events LLC, glossy brochures promising authentic Mexican family traditions, customer testimonials, even event insurance documents. "Sir," she said, dripping with fake concern, "I need you to leave before I contact the police. You're frightening our guests with aggressive energy that often comes with certain cultural backgrounds. This is a peaceful family gathering." I started pulling out my phone, showing anyone who would look my driver's license with the same address, my mortgage app, bank statements, and photos from last Christmas, a proof I lived here. Sophia's mother studied my documents, then asked, "If this is your house, Why haven't you been here for months? I explained that I'd been away working to open another location, but it was clear this was just the beginning of a much bigger nightmare. I explained that I'd been away opening a restaurant location in Vegas, that the house was mine, and I had no clue who this woman was or how she had managed to get inside. But Karen was prepared for this moment. She turned toward the crowd and said, "This gentleman is obviously experiencing an emotional episode." In some communities, people can have unusually intense attachments to physical possessions. The real Rodriguez family would never disrupt a sacred Quincy A++ era. They know how to show proper cultural respect. Then she pulled out her phone and called 911 right in front of everyone. "Yes, this is Margaret Hutchinson at 1247 Oak Street. We need police immediately. There's an aggressive Hispanic male claiming ownership of our cultural venue. He's becoming agitated, and I'm worried for our guests' safety." You know how these situations can escalate when people think they're entitled to something that isn't theirs. At the same time, I was on the phone with 911 myself. "This is Ben Rodriguez. There are about 100 strangers throwing an unauthorized party in my house." When Detective Grace Thompson arrived, responding to what dispatch had called a domestic disturbance, she was greeted by a massive Quincy A++ era. A bewildered family who had paid $15,000 for what they believed was a legitimate venue, and two people both insisting they owned the same home. Grace looked over my documents: a deed, mortgage, driver's license, utility bills, everything checked out. But then she examined Cynthia's folder, and the woman had business licenses, signed event contracts, and what appeared to be HOA authorization. The detective's dilemma was obvious. I clearly owned the house, yet Cynthia had been running what seemed like a legitimate business, complete with paying customers. There I was, standing in my own driveway, barred from entering my own home, while strangers inside toasted near my father's Purple Heart. I thought it couldn't possibly get worse. I was wrong. Later, at a cheap motel, I checked my phone and discovered what Cynthia had posted about me online. The sight of it made my stomach drop. Out of curiosity and dread, I googled my own name. What came up was an elaborate, professionally crafted online identity theft operation. Cynthia had built a Facebook page called Rodriguez Family Cultural Center, boasting 5,000 followers, daily posts about family traditions, and photos of my house labeled as the ancestral home. The events section showcased dozens of celebrations she had hosted, all while pretending to be part of my family. The reviews were jaw-dropping. One read, "Amazing Quincy A++ era venue." The Rodriguez grandmother even shared beautiful family stories, except that grandmother was an actress Cynthia had hired. Another review gushed, "Incredible wedding location. Rodriguez family recipes were delicious," though I knew she just ordered food from the local Mexican place and passed it off as family cooking. The most disturbing review said, "The family patriarch's military service story brought tears to my eyes, because she was using my father's actual service record as entertainment for paying guests." Then I found her pricing list. She was running a full-blown business empire with my stolen identity. Quincy A++ eras, $15,000 for the authentic Mexican family venue experience. Weddings, $25,000 for the historic Spanish colonial mansion. Baptisms, $8,000 for the blessed Catholic family home. Cultural parties, $10,000. Cooking classes, $200 per person to learn real Rodriguez family recipes. Doing the math, she was easily pulling in over $50,000 a month using my name, my home, my father's service history, and fabricated tales about our heritage. She had even constructed an elaborate family mythology, partly based on real details she dug up about us, partly pure fiction. According to her invented history, our family had immigrated in 1890, built the house by hand, preserved traditional recipes from the Bisabula, great-grandmother, served in the military since World War I, and descended from an original Spanish land-grant family. The truth? I bought the house 2 years ago with profits from my restaurant business. My parents immigrated in 1985. I called my neighbors to find out how she had convinced everyone I was dead, and the stories were absurd. Mrs. Patterson told me, "Honey, Cynthia showed us your death certificate, said you died in Mexico visiting family." When I asked what it said, she replied, "Car accident in Guadalajara." She even had a newspaper clipping. The Williams family added, "She told us Mexican cartels had targeted your restaurants. You fled the country and got killed." The Johnsons said, "We even attended your memorial service. Yeah, it was beautiful." I sat there, stunned. They'd held a memorial service at a broken bar for me. Mrs. Patterson told me, "Last month, Cynthia put together a beautiful celebration of your life. He charged the neighbors $75 each for catering." I just stared at her. "Let me get this straight. You're telling me she charged people to attend my fake funeral?" Mrs. Patterson nodded. "It was a traditional Mexican Day of the Dead ceremony. Very moving." She shared stories about your childhood, how you learned to cook from your grandmother, your family's immigration journey, and your father's military service. I almost couldn't breathe. This woman had dug into my family's real history, stolen deeply personal stories, and packaged them as entertainment for people who genuinely thought they were honoring a dead man's memory. Then the Johnsons chimed in, "Oh, and we've been paying Cynthia $200 a month for the Rodriguez family security service." My jaw dropped. "What security service?" They explained. "After a broken bar passed, she told us Mexican cartels might come after the neighborhood looking for your relatives. We pay her to keep watch and protect us." So, the cartel lie she'd invented to explain my fake death had now been repurposed to squeeze money out of frightened neighbors who believed they were in danger. I started adding up her scam. The event income alone of $50,000 a month for 4 months came to $200,000. Security fees from 15 neighbors at $200 a month for 4 months added another $12,000. Cooking classes at $200 per person, 10 people per class, 8 classes, that was $16,000 more. The memorial service brought in $3,000 from 40 people at $75 each. On top of that, she'd been selling so-called blessed household items, probably just random objects from my home, at $50 a pop to 100 buyers, raking in another $5,000. Grand total, $236,000 stolen through identity theft in just 4 months. But this went beyond the money. Reading through online posts about my supposed death made me realize the real damage. People were saying things like, "So sad about the Rodriguez family tragedy. At least Cynthia keeps their traditions alive." Others wrote, "That poor family. Thank goodness Cynthia is maintaining the property." One comment said my father's military service had inspired their son to enlist. The entire neighborhood believed her version of events. She wasn't just taking my home and my money, she was stealing my heritage, my family's honor, and turning my culture into something she could sell to outsiders. She had created an authentic Mexican experience for non-Mexican families who wanted to feel like they were participating in genuine tradition, except it was all stolen from my family and filled in with Google searches. She taught traditional recipes she found online, claimed spiritual ties to Mexican culture she had no right to, and used my father's military record as a crowd-pleasing anecdote. Then I found out about the next scheme. People in the community were organizing something for the following night, an annual Rodriguez family memorial celebration where 150 people would each pay $100 to honor the late Ben Rodriguez and support the preservation of the family legacy. That's $15,000 for a fake death. My fake death. The question pounding in my head, should I gamble everything on one desperate move? Before I could second-guess myself, I saw a post from Cynthia promoting the event. Before we see what happens next, drop a comment letting in a drama nest know what city you're watching from. I decided right then I was going to crash my own memorial service. The next evening, I got into position early, hiding in the bushes across from my house to watch her set up. And wow, she had gone all out. My backyard had been transformed into a scene straight out of a Day of the Dead festival. Hundreds of candles, a professional mariachi band, a catering truck plastered with traditional Rodriguez family mole recipe, and, unbelievably, a merchandise table selling Rodriguez family legacy t-shirts for $25 a piece. She was even running a so-called authentic Mexican hot chocolate stand, charging $10 a cup. This woman had transformed my fake death into a full-scale money-making operation. When the ceremony began, Cynthia emerged wearing a dramatic black dress with a veil, fully committing to her role as the heartbroken family friend. "Welcome," Friends, she told the crowd, to our annual celebration of the life and legacy of beloved Ben Rodriguez. The audience was a strange mix of local neighbors, repeat customers from her past events, Mexican culture enthusiasts, and even strangers who had never met me but had fallen in love with her online narrative. She launched into an elaborate eulogy, painting me as a vibrant soul who brought unmatched energy to the community, then claimed I had fallen in with dangerous influences as success attracted the wrong kind of attention. But then she crossed into pure fiction, spinning tales about our deep friendship, with fake tears sliding down her cheeks. She recounted a supposed moment when I had shared my grandmother's recipe with her and told her she preserved our heritage more faithfully than some born into it. The crowd was eating it up, genuinely emotional over this manufactured story. Next, she claimed my final words before heading to Mexico were, "Take care of the house, Cynthia. Make sure our family legacy never dies." I nearly choked in my hiding spot behind the bushes. The truth, I told her, water the plants. The lowest point came when she unveiled her next tribute project at the Rodriguez Family Cultural Foundation, allegedly dedicated to preserving authentic Mexican traditions through education and events. In reality, it was a scam dressed up as a non-profit for tax benefits. She began selling $500 founding memberships right there, and people were actually signing up. I watched neighbors pull out their checkbooks without hesitation. That was my cue. As Cynthia reached the emotional peak of her speech about my spirit watching over them, I stepped into the candlelight and said, "Reports of my death have been greatly exaggerated." Chaos exploded instantly. Screams of ghost rang out. Some people fainted, others bolted for their cars, and the mariachi band stopped mid-song like a record scratch. One guest even called 911 to report a supernatural disturbance. Cynthia's face went pale, but she quickly countered, claiming I was an impersonator and that the real Ben was in heaven. So, I decided to prove myself with details only the real Ben could know. The secret chocolate and coffee twist in our family mole recipe, the location of Dad's hidden backup medals in the bedroom closet, the story behind my childhood scar from a bike crash at age 8, Mom's maiden name engraved inside her wedding ring, and Dad's special nickname for me, Mayo Jeef, Little Boss. Recognition spread through the crowd. Mrs. Patterson gasped, "Oh my God, you're alive." The Williams family apologized, saying they'd mourned me and even brought casseroles to my funeral. The Johnsons admitted they'd lit candles for my soul every night, as neighbors realized they had attended a fake funeral, paid for fake memorials, and grieved a man who was standing right in front of them. Their sorrow turned to fury, all directed at Cynthia. But she didn't give up without one last wild story. She claimed I was possessed by my own restless spirit, my aggressive energy the result of unresolved cultural trauma, and that my soul was trying to speak through an unqualified vessel. When Mrs. Patterson pointed out she had old photos of me taken before I supposedly died, Cynthia pivoted, saying those images were prophetic visions she had foreseen as a psychic. Luckily, I had come prepared with proof. I displayed bank records showing she'd made $236,000 from events using my stolen identity, screenshots of her social media posts about Rodriguez family heritage, copies of the fake death certificate, business licenses fraudulently filed under my name, and contracts promising an authentic Rodriguez experience. When Maria Santos saw the evidence, she snapped, "You charged us $15,000 for a Quincia A++ venue using the stolen identity." Scandal ignited a level of community outrage I'd never witnessed before. The Johnsons were livid, having spent $200 a month for protection from a cartel threat that turned out to be fabricated. That's when Cynthia completely unraveled. Faced with 150 furious customers demanding their money back, she shouted, "Fine, yes, I embellished his cultural story but he abandoned this property." She went on to claim that people from certain backgrounds, once they find success, often fail to sustain it, and she was simply preserving what he didn't value. When I accused her of turning my father's military service into a dinner show, she coolly replied, "Your father's service was a tragic waste until I gave it meaning and educational opportunities that honored his sacrifice in ways your family never could." As the reality sank in for 200 people that they had been mourning someone still very much alive, I felt a flicker of victory. But Detective Grace's expression suggested otherwise. She pulled me aside and whispered a thought that unsettled me. What if this was exactly what Cynthia had intended from the start? The following morning, Grace called with news that made my stomach drop. Overnight, they'd searched Cynthia's home and uncovered something shocking: 3 separate wedding contracts for the same Saturday, all listing my property as the venue and totaling $75,000 in bookings. Each contract had been signed by Cynthia Hutchinson, acting as the Rodriguez estate's manager. The first was a colorful Mexican-themed celebration for 200 guests at $25,000. The second, a Gothic vampire wedding for 150 guests at $30,000. The third, a rustic country western event for 100 guests at $20,000. Each couple had already paid a $5,000 deposit, leaving Cynthia with $15,000 in her account for events that couldn't possibly happen simultaneously. When Grace asked what I wanted to do, an idea sparked. Let's just a broken bar, let it happen. I want to see her explain this to 450 wedding guests. Grace paused, then smiled. Perfect, that'll give us nearly 500 witnesses to her fraud, so we plan to watch from across the street. The chaos began early. By mid-morning, 3 catering trucks rolled up at the same time, the first boasting authentic Mexican fiesta in bright paint, the second reading Gothic romance dark, and the third labeled Country Roads BBQ beans. Each driver insisted they were delivering for the Rodriguez estate wedding. Confusion erupted instantly. Then came the decorators. The Mexican crew strung vibrant banners, set up a mariachi stage, and filled the air with festive color. The Gothic team brought black roses, candelabras, and fog machines. The country crew unloaded hay bales, horseshoes, and a rustic barnwood arch. All 3 swore Cynthia had booked them for the same address. By early afternoon, the bands arrived. Trumpets from the mariachi group blared over the pounding of a death metal act while fiddles twanged from the country band of 3 competing sound checks, creating pure chaos. Neighbors started calling the police over the noise. And then, the real show. 3 full wedding processions arrived at once. The Mexican celebration poured in with 200 guests in vivid traditional attire, a gold-detailed bridal gown, and flower petals scattered along the path. The Gothic party swept in with 150 guests dressed in black Victorian fashion, a bride in a black gown with crimson accents, and a fog-filled aisle. The country crowd showed up in boots and sundresses, with a bride in a simple white dress and cowboy boots, arriving in an actual horse-drawn carriage. All 3 bridal parties met at my backyard gate at exactly the same momenta, each staring in disbelief at the others while their music clashed into one unholy soundtrack of trumpets, metal screams, and banjo strings. 450 guests stood bewildered, unsure whose wedding they were actually attending. That's when Cynthia appeared, freshly out on bail, attempting to wrangle the disaster. She turned to the Mexican family and tried to pass off the Gothic DA copyright core as part of a Day of the Dead theme. A broken bar, she assured the Gothic couple. The mariachi music? Oh, those are authentic Mexican death ballads, so very traditional. Then she turned to the country family, explaining, the fog machines? That's just mourning mist to add a rustic touch. The scene was pure madness. 3 different officiants were trying to conduct wedding ceremonies simultaneously, a Catholic priest for the Mexican wedding, a Wiccan priestess for the Gothic wedding, and a justice of the peace for the country wedding. Mariachi music clashed with death metal and country tunes, creating an absurd battle of the bands right in the backyard. 450 guests wandered in utter confusion, unsure which event they were actually part of. That's when the bride started arguing. The Mexican bride asked the Gothic bride, "Why are you wearing black to a wedding?" The Gothic bride turned to the country bride, demanding, "Why is there hay all over my ceremony?" The country bride shot back at the Mexican bride, "Why are there skeletons at my rustic celebration?" Then the mothers-in-law jumped into the fray. Flower girls from different weddings were crying, and ring bearers were hopelessly lost, not knowing which altar they were supposed to approach. Right in the middle of this chaos, I walked in through the gate and said, "Hello everyone, welcome to my house. I'm Ben Rodriguez, the actual homeowner. The entire crowd went silent, except for the mariachi band, which kept playing softly. I showed my mortgage papers, driver's license, and bank records to all three families. Then I explained, this woman stole my identity, used it to create a fake venue business, and apparently booked all of your weddings in my stolen home. The reaction was immediate. The Mexican father yelled, "We paid $25,000 for a Rodriguez family venue." The Gothic groom shouted, "We paid $30,000 for an exclusive Gothic mansion." The country mother snapped, "We paid $20,000 for a private ranch wedding." When I told them Cynthia had taken $75,000 in total, the entire crowd surrounded her like she was exactly what she was, a criminal. Cynthia tried one last desperate defense. "This is a misunderstanding. Ben is jealous of my success in improving his family's business." The Mexican priest asked if she had stolen my identity. She smirked. "I didn't steal it, I made it profitable." The Gothic priestess pointed out she had committed fraud against three families, to which Cynthia replied, "It's not fraud if everyone enjoy themselves." The justice of the peace deadpanned, "Ma'am, no one here is enjoying this." Seeing three brides fighting while hundreds of guests demanded refunds seemed like the height of absurdity until Detective Grace put handcuffs on Cynthia, and she whispered something that chilled me to the core. The triple wedding wasn't her main schema, it was just a cover. I went to court for her arraignment expecting justice, but outside the courthouse was a news van and a group of protesters waving signs that read, "Justice for Cynthia and Stop Corporate Identity Theft." I asked one protester what that even meant, and she glared at me like I was the villain, saying, "Some greedy corporation is trying to steal the Rodriguez family heritage from community leader Cynthia Hutchinson." I told her, "I am the Rodriguez family. She stole my identity." Without hesitation, she snapped, "That's exactly what a corporate oppressor would say." That's when I realized Cynthia had somehow flipped the narrative and made herself the victim. While I was dealing with angry protesters, my lawyer called with news that made my stomach drop. Cynthia had filed a counter-lawsuit claiming that I had stolen her identity. She was demanding $500,000 in damages. When I read her legal complaint, I was stunned. She claimed she was the rightful Rodriguez family member, and I was some corporate fraud who had stolen her established business identity. She wanted $500,000 for lost revenue and emotional distress, plus ownership of my home as compensation for identity theft. Her argument was pure madness. She insisted she had been operating as the Rodriguez family representative for 8 months. While I was working on building a thriving cultural business, Ben Rodriguez suddenly appeared out of nowhere, blatantly hijacking the well-established Rodriguez family brand I had created. My attorney glanced at me and said, "Ben, this is hands down the most absurd lawsuit I've seen in 2 decades of practicing law. She's literally suing you for being a broken bar." I asked if such a thing was even possible, and he shrugged. "Apparently, it is." Meanwhile, from her jail cell, Cynthia was giving phone interviews to local news outlets. When a reporter asked, "Miss Hutchinson, you're facing identity theft charges," she replied, "I'm the victim of reverse identity theft. That man stole my Rodriguez family business identity." When the reporter pointed out that my actual last name was Rodriguez, she dismissed it with, "Names can be changed. I've been managing the Rodriguez family for months. He's just some latecomer trying to take my work." The community quickly divided. About 30 people stood behind Cynthia Karen, club members from around the country, anti-gentrification activists who bizarrely thought I symbolized corporate takeover, conspiracy theorists convinced the Rodriguez family was part of a deep state operation, and even scam victims who still refused to believe she conned them. On my side, over 200 people voiced their support, neighbors who knew the truth, 450 wedding guests who had seen her fraud firsthand, members of the local Hispanic community offended by her blatant cultural appropriation, and veterans furious about her exploitation of military service. When we reached the courtroom, Judge Martinza, himself Hispanic, which added a layer of irony, summed up the case. "Let me get this straight, Miss Hutchinson. You're suing Mr. Rodriguez for using his own name?" Cynthia looked at him and said, "Your Honor, identity is about cultural understanding, not genetics. I've proven my appreciation for Rodriguez's heritage through months of dedicated research, while he simply inherited a name without earning it. The judge studied her, then said, "Ma'am, you're white." She shot back, "That's cultural gatekeeping. I've invested more time and thought into understanding Mexican heritage than most people born into it. DNA tests are outdated. A real cultural identity is earned through knowledge, not bloodline." I had brought a mountain of evidence: my decades-old birth certificate, school records bearing the Rodriguez name from kindergarten, a decade of business licenses for my restaurants, generations of family photos, DNA test results proving my Hispanic heritage, my father Carlos Rodriguez's military records, and the property deed purchased with legitimate family funds. Cynthia's evidence was laughably an 8-month-old business license filed illegally, fake online reviews she wrote herself, a clearly fabricated genealogy report done in Microsoft Word, recipes stolen from restaurant websites, and testimonials from people she had swindled. The judge asked if she had DNA evidence of Rodriguez's heritage. She said, "DNA tests are racist. Identity comes from the heart, not blood." Judge Martinez replied, "That's not how family names work." Cynthia insisted, "I've studied Mexican culture for months. I know it better than most people born into it." The judge even turned to the court reporter and asked, "Are you getting this? For my countersuit, I saw $236,000 for revenue she stole from her fake identity business, $75,000 for damages from the triple wedding scam, $50,000 for emotional distress from her staged death hoax, and $25,000 for defamation from her false criminal claims of $386,000 total." Every witness, neighbors, customers, veterans, and all 450 wedding attendees confirmed she had declared me dead, claimed to manage the family, and charged money for phony Rodriguez heritage experiences. The turning point came when my lawyer played a memorial service recording in which Cynthia clearly stated, "Ben Rodriguez tragically died in Mexico, and I'm preserving the family legacy." When asked about it, she replied, "Dead spiritually, not physically." The judge reminded her, "You held a funeral." She countered, "It was symbolic for his old identity." That was it for Judge Martinez. "This," he declared, "is the most frivolous lawsuit I've ever seen." The court dismissed the case, ordering Cynthia to pay Mr. Rodriguez $386,000 in damages plus court costs. Her final outburst echoed through the courtroom, "This is systemic discrimination against educated cultural preservationists. You're defending primitive tribal ideals over refined heritage management." I elevated the Rodriguez culture with class and professionalism beyond its original context. The bailiff had to cut her off. Outside, a few former members of her support circle demanded to know how they'd been convinced to back a woman who once staged a funeral for a living person. Local news issued a correction, and social media erupted with ridicule aimed at Cynthia's outrageous claims. Leaving the courthouse with that $386,000 judgment felt like the ultimate win until I saw the smug grin on her face as they escorted her away. It told me she wasn't done yet. That evening, I learned exactly what she'd been planning, and it was so absurd I almost thought I was imagining it. Pulling onto my street, I expected quiet relief at home, but instead found my house turned into the scene of a massive celebration. Streamers and balloons covered my yard, and a massive banner declared, "Cynthia's Freedom Celebration, Victory over Corporate Oppression." There were more than 50 cars crammed along the road, a catering truck in my driveway, a DJ blasting music from my patio, and a t-shirt vendor on my lawn selling free Cynthia merchandise to roughly 80 people. I called Detective Grace in disbelief. "How is Cynthia hosting a party at my house when she is sitting in jail awaiting trial?" I demanded. Grace sounded baffled. "That's impossible. She's been in custody since the arraignment." "Then explain the 80 people celebrating her freedom in my backyard." I shot back. The truth came out quickly as Cynthia's cousin Rachel had organized the entire event. Rachel, just as entitled as her cousin, stood in my yard with a megaphone, announcing, "My cousin Cynthia is a political prisoner, a victim of a corporate conspiracy to erase the Rodriguez family heritage." The crowd was a bizarre mix. Former Karen group members who'd driven in from other states, Anti-gentrification activists convinced I was a corporate villain, conspiracy theorists certain the trial was a sham, and even people who had lost money to Cynthia but still refused to admit she'd conned them. Rachel had printed glossy programs for the so-called Rodriguez Cultural Freedom Festival, claiming it honored Cynthia Hutchinson's fight against identity colonization. She was charging $25 admission for Cynthia's legal defense fund, essentially profiting off her cousin's crimes. The merchandise table was surreal: $1.30 t-shirts with slogans like "Free Cynthia Rodriguez," "Still using my family name," "Stop corporate identity theft," "Cultural appreciation, not appropriation," and "Justice for Rodriguez family friends." $10 buttons read "Cynthia understands culture better, support white allies," and "Ben equals corporate oppressor." People were actually buying them and parading around my property like this was some political movement. I confronted Rachel directly. "This is my house. Your cousin is in jail for stealing my identity." She stared at me as if I'd lost my mind. "Cynthia warned me you'd say that." Classic gaslighting. I showed her my property deed and mortgage papers, the official proof I owned the place. She didn't even blink. Fake documents. Anyone can Photoshop paperwork. The crowd booed me in my own backyard like truth didn't matter anymore. Then Rachel put Cynthia on speakerphone so she could address the gathering from jail. Cynthia's voice rang out, "My beautiful supporters, don't let corporate Ben destroy our community organizing." I couldn't hold back. "Cynthia, you're white. Rodriguez is my family name. You staged my fake funeral." Her reply was almost unbelievable. "That's hate speech. You can't gatekeep ethnicity based on DNA." The crowd erupted in cheers for Hira and boos for me, the actual victim. But I wasn't done. I called my real family, asking them to come over immediately. Within half an hour, my Uncle Miguel arrived, clearly a Rodriguez relative, speaking fluent Spanish. My Aunt Rosa brought photo albums spanning 5 decades, and my cousin Carlos carried family documents tracing our heritage back generations. When my genuine Rodriguez family members began sharing stories in Spanish and showing undeniable proof of our lineage, the atmosphere shifted. As stories from our shared childhood unfolded, you could see the dawning realization on people's faces as if they'd been backing a total fraud. Uncle Miguel glanced at the crowd and, in his thickly accented English, asked, "Who is this crazy white woman claiming our family name?" Aunt Rosa burst out laughing and replied, "Esta," meaning this white girl in Spanish. When they began showing real family photos and speaking our native language effortlessly, even the anti-gentrification activists started to look uneasy. The Karen support crowd quietly slipped away, and even the conspiracy theorists struggled to explain how 3 generations of genuine Rodriguez relatives were standing right in front of them. Cynthia's voice still crackled over the speakerphone, growing more frantic with every word. "Those aren't real Rodriguez family members. Ben hired Mexican actors to play the part." Aunt Rosa glanced at the phone and asked, "Kiko? A Spanish for what did she say?" Uncle Miguel replied, "Loca," meaning she's out of her mind. Cynthia kept digging deeper. "See, they're speaking Spanish to cover up the conspiracy." Uncle Miguel addressed the crowd. "This woman tried to steal my nephew's identity. In Mexico, we call that an estafadora scammer." As the so-called Freedom Party unraveled around Rachel, she realized her own cousin had set her up. She began demanding refunds, admitted Cynthia had lied about everything, apologized to me for the harassment, and moved to shut down the merchandise tables. Vendors quickly packed up, while attendees demanded their money back. One t-shirt seller was left with stacks of unsellable Cynthia Rodriguez shirts. Detective Grace arrived and added to Cynthia's already heavy list of charges a wire fraud for her jailhouse calls, ongoing identity theft for selling merchandise under the Rodriguez name, organizing criminal acts while in prison, violating a restraining order, and conspiring with Rachel. What began as a rally for Cynthia ended with dozens of people cheering at the news of her extended jail time. The best part? Watching my real family turn the chaos into a genuine cultural celebration. Uncle Miguel telling heartfelt childhood stories and Aunt Rosa sharing treasured recipes with neighbors who had once believed Cynthia's lies. I thought that was the end of it. But then Detective Grace called with something that turned everything upside down. What they discovered in Cynthia's cell wasn't just incriminating, it revealed her true motive all along. The question was, would anyone believe it? This story was about to get even more outrageous. Drop a comment and let Anna Dramanest know where you're watching from, because what comes next will shock you. The next morning, Detective Grace delivered the news that stunned me. During a routine cell inspection, guards uncovered what they called the most delusional business plan they'd ever seen: a 47-page manifesto titled Rodriguez Cultural Empire, Post-Prison Expansion Strategy 2025-2030. Yes, she had spent her time behind bars plotting to franchise authentic Mexican experiences to other white women across the nation. Her wild plan involved launching Rodriguez Cultural Consulting across the country, publishing a book titled How I Became More Mexican Than Mexicans, starting a lifestyle channel, and an unbelievably suing Netflix, Taco Bell, and Chipotle for using the Rodriguez heritage without consent. The court-appointed psychiatrist's evaluation came as no surprise. Defendant exhibits delusional narcissistic personality disorder with a fixation on cultural appropriation. She believes she has a legal right to any identity she improves. When asked why she had chosen my family, her answer sent a chill down my spine. They had everything I deserved. I worked harder than them and got nothing. I made their boring story profitable. To her, my nice home and successful business were reason enough to take everything from me and profit off it. Seeking closure, I visited her one last time in jail. I asked, "Do you understand what you did wrong?" Her reply was exactly what I expected. "My only mistake was trusting people to understand my vision. I elevated your family legacy and made it profitable. You should be paying me." When I reminded her she'd held a fake funeral for me while I was alive, she waved it off a marketing strategy. I created emotional investment in the Rodriguez brand. I told her my father's Purple Heart wasn't a brand, it was sacred. She just stared at me as if I were the crazy one. "Everything is a brand. I understand marketing better than you." When I asked why my family, her prejudice spilled out. "You had a nice house, a thriving business, and community respect, things I deserved more. I worked 60-hour weeks in real estate and got nothing. You inherited restaurant success." I explained that I hadn't inherited a single thing. I built my restaurants from the ground up after my father passed away, but she wouldn't accept it. According to her, it was impossible. "Mexicans don't create successful businesses without help," she insisted. And there it was, the blatant racism that had fueled her actions from the start. She truly believed that Hispanic people couldn't succeed on their own. The sentencing hearing was unlike anything the federal courthouse had ever seen. More than 500 people packed every seat: victims, neighbors, veterans, and my entire Rodriguez family. Judge Martinez read the long list of charges: 47 counts of fraud from multiple incidents, identity theft, falsifying death certificates, wire fraud from her jail phone calls, elder abuse for conning senior citizens, civil rights violations for targeting based on ethnicity, and organized crime for running a calculated fraud operation. The damages totaled $426,000. Victim statements were heartbreaking. A representative of the 450 wedding guests said, "She stole our most important day and $75,000 of family savings." Neighbors spoke about how she preyed on their fears, charging them protection money. My uncle Miguel described the dishonor she brought to our family's proud military history. When it was my turn, I told the judge, "She didn't just take my identity. She tried to erase my family's honor and replace it with profit." Every testimony proves Cynthia systematically abused trust, exploited military service, and manipulated community ties for her own gain. Cynthia's final statement to the court was jaw-dropping. She claimed, "Your Honor, this is cultural protectionism. They're silencing innovative heritage preservation because they can't handle professional management of traditions. I was bringing standards to culture mismanaged by those who simply inherited it without earning it." When Judge Martinez asked if she felt remorse, she replied, "I regret getting caught. In 10 years, people will realize I was ahead of my time. Cultural consulting is a billion-dollar industry." The judge stared at her and said, "That's not remorse, Then he delivered the sentence that made the whole courtroom erupt in applause: 25 years in federal prison, no chance of early parole. Today, my neighborhood is a model of unity. We host an annual Not Dead Yet festival, drawing thousands to celebrate authentic culture. We hire real mariachi bands. Uncle Miguel now serves as HOA president, Aunt Rose teaches Spanish to local kids, and not a single fake Rodriguez relative is in sight. My restaurants thrived from all the publicity, with menu items like the Survived by Cynthia sandwich, Not Dead Yet taco special, and Ghost salsa, extra hot. Revenue skyrocketed by 400%. From prison, Cynthia's behavior hasn't changed. Guards tell me she tried to start a Rodriguez inmates' rights group, complains that prison food culturally appropriates her heritage, pretends to teach Spanish despite not speaking it, and sends letters to immigration demanding the deportation of fake Rodriguez family members. Most inmates avoid her. With a $426,000 settlement, I founded the Rodriguez Family Foundation, offering legal aid for identity theft victims, cultural education programs, veteran family support, and scholarships for Hispanic students. We also opened a community center in my father's memory. Even behind bars, Cynthia sends intercepted letters. One said, "The Rodriguez name belongs to visionaries like me. When I get out in 22 years, we'll be back in court. I've been studying Mexican culture and law. I'm more qualified to be Rodriguez than you. P.S. I'm learning Mandarin to steal Chinese identity next." Some people never learn. So, that's my story. Cynthia Hutchinson tried to steal my identity, hold my funeral, and trademark my heritage and failed spectacularly. She's still in federal prison, now convinced she's Native American and demanding casino rights. Ironically, she brought my family closer together and showed our community the meaning of true unity. Here's the lesson: your identity is yours. No one can take it, no matter how hard they try. Sometimes, those who try to destroy you end up helping you build something stronger. If you ever find yourself in Austin, stop by Rodriguez BBQ and try the Cynthia Special, a sandwich full of bologna, heavy on the salt, and loaded with delusion. If this story made you as angry as it did me, smash that like button. Here at Anna Drama Nest, we bring you the most unbelievable true stories where justice always wins. Subscribe now, the next one will be even wilder.